Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Haney. I use she, they pronouns. I identify as a neurospicy trans queer woman. And it is my absolute honor to introduce Finn Gratton, they, them. Finn is a somatic psychotherapist and consultant in the San Francisco Bay Area, specializing in the intersections of somatics, trauma, neurodiversity, and sexual and gender minorities. In addition to publishing Supporting Transgender Autistic Youth and Adults, a guide for professionals and families, Finn, who identifies as white, autistic, and non-binary, also provides neurodiversity affirming consultation and training to groups and individuals in the US and internationally. Thank you, and let's give a warm round of applause to Finn.
Thank you for the quiet, warm applause. A lot of you know about autistic experience and have seen me modeling what happens when I'm in conferences. So I am so grateful to be here. I'm a little wondering, like, who's here? I had to miss the first part. Oh my God, the echo. Okay. I had to miss the first part because I had to run one of my consultation groups, and maybe there was a time to know, but how many of you are like program managers or things like that? Okay. And how many of you are like mental health practitioners? Okay. And how many of you are like general other healthcare practitioners? Okay, not a few. And educators, DEI consultant people, community, you can be in more than one thing. Community activists, organizers. Okay, cool. This is not an outing yourself if you don't want to. But I'm assuming a bunch of people here are also neuroqueer, neurodivergent something. So if you want to say, hell yes, I am, fine, you can raise your hand. Okay, cool, thank you. How many of you have had some kind of training, lived experience counts as major training, in neurodiversity affirming care? Okay, thank you. Sometimes I have no idea, and then I present kind of too much on the wrong thing. Okay, so I love giving presentations, and it's kind of hard because my brain doesn't organize linear, and so a lot of what it is, a lot of the big wounding with any marginalized people, I think, but my experience is neurodivergent and particularly autistic, and I also think I'm vast, which is what we're calling, what they used to call ADHD. The wounding piece is not being met, and that's a very physical experience. It's like in your digestive system, actually. That's why we get sick so much, is we're not being met, and we have a hard time meeting each other, and we wish to connect, like in this conference, which has all this wonderful accessibility. Like, I super appreciate the COVID thing, and I tested negative this morning, which helped me feel better about presenting without a mask. But there's a lot of really hard things about conferences because I have hyperacusis, which makes a whole bunch of sounds be really kind of painful. And probably related is I have auditory filtering, so it's really cacophonous when people are talking in music, and it makes my nervous system get really excited. That's why I wear headphones and play something really beady and live inside this little cave of my music. But now I want to, like, connect. And I'm going to use up some of my time and skip some slides to do that, because I think it's the most important thing. And it's the most important thing if you're working with anybody who's different than you. And it's the most important thing for me as a neurodivergent person, because what like my kids who also are other people, it's like, I just felt them and they didn't feel okay, which meant you couldn't feel. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to back up a little bit and see if the echo is okay. And I was in the midst of my presentation, Canyon, and I've known Canyon for a day, and I heard them, and I had to stop, say, y'all, be right back. And I'm like, this is opening time. We have to be here. So I also sing, and I want to sing like to connect, and so that we're on some kind of resonance, and it will carry my wish for this presentation. May we have open ears and hearts and to each other. Maybe wonder at what we don't know, and pay as much attention to what is not said or even done as how we interact. It's the greatest thing for access. I'm going to read to you a tiny bit from my chapter in Surviving Transphobia. Y'all go out and get Surviving Transphobia, it's wonderful. I'm going to sing my vision here. I'm going to sing what is possible, what is potent and pleasurable. I'm going to sing the spinning, rocking, flapping, humming play that is human, that is all of us, that is the universe playing with us, playing through us. I'm going to sing the freedom, oh, the price we pay, of trans autistic people. I'm going to lift up the saving power, the power, I say, of trans autistic people and their knowing against all signs indicating otherwise, that the self, that life itself can't be compromised. Oh, we compromise or are compromised, but just like everyone else, and like everyone else, lose the thrumming pulse of here and now, get lost from ourselves, from life moving through us. Yet at the same time, we can't help it. We keep sticking out. We keep not doing it right. A hand jumps, an eye twitches, a hum erupts. Life keeps moving through us. From our infancies, we have been unintentional rebels against the colonization of our bodies, and we have paid for that rebellion since before we knew we were doing anything wrong. Some of us learned through stick and carrot to withhold, to draw away from life, while always knowing that the guard would slip, and with that slip, a piece of our personal wilderness would break over the bow. It would break, and we would pay. We would pay in the coinage of rejection, of punishment, and of shame, and that wild, holy water of life that betrayed us would bless us too. Bless us with remembrance of who we are and what life truly is. Some of us can't hold it back well at all, can't restrain the innate urges, the reactions to pain and pleasure, the irritation of the abrasions incurred at the interface with the domesticated world, not with the birds and the trees, not with the water that dances with us, but with the walls, the rules, the abrupt changes in rhythm. Those who pathologize want to divide us, spread us out along a spectrum. Those who can't contain their aliveness and their pain, who can't bridge the neurotypical interface with a neutral face or a nod, are labeled low-functioning or classically autistic, a conceit aimed to divide us from our kin and from ourselves. Transpose this to socially accepted trans narrative that places those trans men and women who most nearly represent cisgender and white people at the top of the ladder. Low-functioning trans people, they're the ones judged to be doing it wrong or not be trans enough to be real. the non-binary, the agender, the gender fluid, the ones who can't or won't pass. Everyone is lined up against the measuring lines on the walls except the ones who can't make sense of all this measuring, the ones who keep wandering around, balancing the stick on the palm of their hand, tapping out a rhythm on the floor with it, turning it into a sword and drawing it up, slicing through the air, the ones whose relating has nothing to do with acknowledging or creating a power differential, but instead are all about playing with life. I won't be divided from them. Okay. Thank you for helping me, all of you, communicate. I will forward. And the first is to ask you, there's all kinds of access needs. One is about processing speed. So if I'm going to ask people in the midst of my presentation, even if I don't finish it, if I'm going too fast or it's too hard to understand something, to just convey to me, stand up, stick your hand up, yell at me, and say it's too hard, slow down, something. I didn't tell you that before I read this, but same if there's like, I'm totally lost, what did you just say in words, not just speed. Otherwise, save your questions to the end or to afterwards. I don't think we'll really have time. What time do I end? Somebody tell me. Because I know this is later than when I planned to start. Okay, y'all are stuck with me. I know Canyon has to be somewhere, so somebody's gonna explain this to me. Okay, another is if there's any harm or hurt in what I say, that also to me is a time to stop if you want me to stop. If you'd rather come to me afterwards, great, but if you go, it's gonna be important for everybody else that I stop you, as well as me and you who are stopping me, then please stop me, okay? You already know who I am, but you don't know I love trains, such an autistic trope, but I do. I was told to never give presentations. I've been doing it since, Here's some information about the neurodiversity model, affirming model. Neurodivergence isn't a disorder. It's expressed and perceived differently, well, just by different people, because we're all different, and it's expressed differently across cultures. Neurodivergent experience and expressions change over time and context, just like our gender expressions change and our everything changes. But if somebody said, oh, you used to be able to do it, I said, well, that was when it was quiet, and I was, now I can't. And clinical issues are not about the neurodivergence usually. They're about, almost never, they're about the effect of cultural, interpersonal, and other reactions. Okay, so the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD that we work with. The language I'll use autistic rather than a person with autism or on the spectrum. Unless somebody says this is what I use, then I use what they use. I'm starting to use VAST, which is variable attention stimulus trait, instead of ADHD. Many people use ADHD and say I'm an ADHDer, so fine. But I'm making the shift because it better describes what's going on, and it's really fun to say, I am vast. Okay? Neurodivergent and neurotypical rather than disordered and normal. You all know the disability language, so I'm just gonna move on. I'm also spending and these are like little take a breath times. So if you get like, I'm getting kind of too much, these are my times to just center with a neurodivergent ancestor. Octavia Butler first. Many of you know her as the writer of Parable of the Sower, the Xenogenesis series, first science fiction writer to receive the MacArthur Fellowship. She had really intense social anxiety and dyslexia. An ancestor of neurodivergent people. It's nice to hold them because it kind of feels like this recent movement, and it's been going on a long time. This is how I began. We're touching now. We're trying to touch in some way energetically, whoever I am or whatever's fed me through time to whatever your experience is, so that something in us changes. Otherwise, why do it if something in us doesn't change in an interaction? Maybe we get better at standing up for ourselves and saying no, but we got a little better at standing up for ourselves and saying no, and your no didn't change, but your strength with that maybe did. We have really different capacities and different modes for touch. I'm really loving being at this combination of LGBTQ and disability justice thing. So I think with Alex's presentation, I don't need to do much here, but I'm a somatic person, so I'm like, we're always wanting to touch at the right distance. So I just had a Zoom session with someone, and even on Zoom, I was like, do you have enough room? And they went, what? I go, well, what if I went like that? She goes, that's better. I go, what if I go like that? She goes, that's better. I go, and when I go forward, she goes, ah! And so we were like back here. And it was just like, can you hear me? Okay. So to really think that those needs don't disappear, and having everybody that close to each other on all our meetings and Zoom windows, that's hard. Most of us don't want to be that close to somebody all the time. And some abilities and disabilities are visible and some are not. Alex just went through Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality, so I'm going to move because somebody going to tell me when I'm supposed to stop? This is going to be hard for my brain. Okay. Who are the people in charge? You all are in here with nobody in charge. Thank you.
I didn't want to interrupt, but
Oh, you can interrupt.
they said anytime between 11:45 and 12.
Okay. Who has a phone or something to tell what time it is? Okay. So I have 15 minutes. I'm going to skip a lot. And when it is 11:45, will you jump? Make sure you get my attention. Thank you. Okay. So some information for you. There's really increased health issues for autistic folks. And neurodivergence is giant. It is anything that is outside the norm. I'm going to be speaking mostly about autism and ADHD because that's my lane, okay? But it's important to know that the average life expectancy for autistic folks is 54 years. We should all be wondering about early childhood experiences for autistic folks. And complex PTSD. The health issues start in childhood. We start seeing things with teenagers. I see things in teenagers that people go, oh, you already have an autoimmune thing that people don't get in their 30s or 40s. Sleep disorders and GI tract stuff is huge. I'm in a huge learning about my own GI tract thing, which I'll share later, if I do. Mental health issues are also really increased in everything, it seems. It's like all the things. If you're autistic ADHD and somebody says, what's going on? You go, all the things are going on. Suicidality is 9 to 13 times higher. Hearing and vision. The rates of autism amongst deaf and hard of hearing are 4 times higher than the rates for the general population. There's over a 3 times higher rate of altered hearing for autistic folks, what I was talking about with the hyperacusis, but also just all the things that you could have are usually there. Deaf and hard of hearing individuals are diagnosed with autism an average of 3 years later than hearing autistic people. And for vision, autistic people have higher rates of strabismus, light sensitivity, farsightedness, nearsightedness, and nystagmus. So what's the prevalence of autism? It's now at about 3%. So 3 out of 100. When I was born, they thought it was 1 in 2,000. The prevalence of ADHD is now thought to be about 11%, and it's estimated about a third of autistic folks are also VAST. I love using VAST. Okay, the trans-autistic overlap is about 11%. About 11% of trans folks are also autistic. 70% of autistic people identify as non-heterosexual, compared to 30% for non-autistic. We're like, why? Why do you make these things we should be? 85% of trans folks also identify as non-heterosexual. So you're just going to have to expect that it's most likely that non-heterosexual. There's a lot of backlash, and the autistic trans people catch it a lot in the political stuff that's going on now. And so there is research in the last year or two, there's no differences in the implicit measures of gender identity between autistic and allistic, non-autistic transgender people. And autistic and allistic young people show no difference in stability of their gender. They may talk about it differently. They don't have the same standard narrative that gets them like, oh, you have gender dysphoria. And often when asked kind of general vague questions by a practitioner, they won't give an answer. They'll sit there, and so they'll say, oh, you haven't thought about it enough. We have to think differently about how we talk with people. I'm going to skip over some of this. Sorry. Ways autistic and trans people have treated badly. Because I know how little time I have, but I'm going to take a break. This is Tom Wiggins, who is a blind, I believe neurodivergent pianist and composer, and black. And it was the 1850s, so there were a lot of things that, intersectional experiences that, and he had an incredible both music and other memory and capacity. Oh, do I have time for this? 15 minutes. Okay, there's 3 of these. Huh? 8? No. I don't. We do human these ways. I'm going to act it out some. We sense where our bodies are in space, and I can reach something maybe with my arm, whether it's a cup. I have a little bit poor proprioception. Reading, the chair fell over. I missed the mouth with my spoon, stuff like that. So I'm going to use this weighted blanket. Exteroception, outside senses. When one or more are missing, our life experience is different. When one or more are strong and super sensitive, our life experience is different. Interoception is our inside experience. Our inside and outside are actually very related. They're not so sharp. The awareness of our internal sensations, if it's super sensitive, that it's going to maybe shut down because it's too much to feel all that feeling inside your stomach all the time. We make sense of all that and how people respond to us by coding things and calling it emotional experience. We try to communicate with each other to protect ourselves, to connect. And we have interest. We are curious creatures, as are many creatures. We have what they call executive functioning, which is kind of how we figure out how we make our brain do things, how we make our body do things, planning, processing things, memory, energy management is kind of part of it. Okay? So, neurodivergent people do it differently. and different from each other. Neurotypical people, if you look at them from an autistic or vast lens, you will say, their emotions are really limited now that I think about it. And the communication is kind of vague and open-ended and seems kind of surface level, unless it's about a specific focused task. And there's something about how they know how to switch who's speaking, and it seems like it's dependent on, like, who has more power. Like, you might have figured that out. So it's important to look at these from both sides. We all have these capacities to various extents. And because neurotypical people are in the majority, they set the norm, and they don't think they're doing anything wrong because they think the autistic or vast person is doing something wrong or deficient or oddly, or they stand out from the beginning. Okay. I'm going to skip over Snowflake Bentley, but not completely. His writing, he was the one who discovered all snowflakes are different. And he did all his work in his backyard, and his writing was considered unscientific, even though it was very detailed, because he wrote more poetically about it because he was so moved by it. Big change. Why universal access? And this was a slide for gender care, but it's for care for neurodivergent people. And universal access for neurodiversity means asking questions about how can this space be more comfortable for you? What has worked for you and not worked for you in medical or mental health or community service environments? Asking everybody, not somebody you just code as weird. Giving actual examples of something you can do, because often people have trouble like identifying what you might be willing to do or able to. Many people don't know they're autistic or vast. Many 50-year-olds, 30-year-olds, they don't know, but they do know that, like, oh, that would be much better if you could do that. Thank you for the sensory room. Getting an assessment is just too expensive for most people. And people often don't quite meet clinical criteria. Clinical criteria was based completely on working with young white boys. So many people who don't fit for some reason, oh, you don't fit the criteria, so we can't give you that label, so you can't get those access. But you can still, through universal design, create access for everybody. Some examples of universal access is encouraging everybody to do what they do to be more comfortable. Different ways to contact you, noting the accessibility, things Alex talked about. Particularly ask about light and sound. Like I did at the beginning, saying, here are ways you can pause or stop me so people don't feel bad about doing that. I'll give my clients like little pause signs and stop signs, just like, that's enough. I think that helps everybody. Like, you got too deep, too fast, and it's not just about, I can't process it, it's just, I don't trust you enough yet. This is what I'm trying to share you, and why I'm skipping things and did other things. The most important is how we connect. And that's a practice. This drawing by my colleague and friend Harper Cheney, there's the words. Hi, what are the best name and pronouns for you? Would you like me to adjust the lighting? Are you comfortable with me sitting next to you? Would you like more space? Even if we're on Zoom. But there's also about this person's kind of posture that makes me feel like, I got room. They're not pushing on me. They're not like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Okay. I'll just put all this up. Okie doke. Here's what you should do, and you got that in your access to things. And that, too. And that's my hand up for questions. It's actually me dancing with myself with my headphones on, but it looks like a hand up, too. There's a resource page at the end, but I think we're at questions now. Go me, did it in the time? Yes. Okay.
All right. Sorry, let me pull back a little bit. So we have Jamie over on the right side of the room and myself on the left side of the room. So just go ahead and raise your hands and we will try to accommodate as many questions as possible.
Oh, hi, my name is Isaac. He, him, his pronouns. And I guess my question is, sometimes, hi, right here. I'm on the right side of the building. Oh, yeah. I guess my question is, sometimes providers have a hard time affirming or determining if somebody's gender identity because they're like, well, they're autistic and I have a hard time communicating and whatnot. So what are some tips that you would give to providers to affirm people's gender identities as well as help them to communicate better when talking about if somebody were trans? And if you have any particular tips, especially for maybe kids and youth or providers who work with kids and youth.
I think sometimes providers want data, so I give them that research, like autistic doesn't really affect their trans identity. They don't want to believe that, even if it's there, you know, and because there's earlier research that wasn't really research. They assumed autistic people couldn't. They assumed autistic people were trans because they like shiny things or because they had more testosterone in their system from the birth, which goes opposite ways. So they don't want to believe that. And then I think there's a sitting down and slowing down with a provider and giving them a chance to be called in about it. There's also a consideration whether that somebody needs to go to a different provider because there are many affirming people out there too. Okay.
Hello. So I'm Augustine. I'm with Price Social South County. My question for you is, what are some good resources to find out about neurodivergency and, you know, my husband's ADHD, he feels like he's autistic as well. And we're both, me and myself and him, are trying to find out more about you know, how he expresses himself, how he as a neurodivergent person interacts with the world. And so I was just curious if you have any resources that we could learn from.
Great. I put on the resource page. I think the very best book just came out. It's called Is This Autism? Donna Henderson, Sarah Wayland, and Jay. Anyway, it's a great book. And Neurodivergent Insights, which is a website, and Divergent Conversations, also fabulous, and that podcast comes out every Friday morning. That's a good start. And just getting on good forums with neurodivergent people, do you do this, and how do you work out this stuff with your partner? Like, I have a partner who's very vast in a different way than I'm vast, and we just have to, like, have really clear conversations, like, get to have really clear conversations, which everybody should have. Yeah. Thank you.
Working or not. Hello,
It's-
there we go. I hope yours is not too loud. My name is Cassette, and so my questions were, one, is there a place where we can see all of your slides? And then second, I'm curious to understand more of the change from ADHD to VAST so I can better understand my VAST cousins.
Okay. People in charge, did my PowerPoint get put on some access place or no? Okay. Send me a message at grattonpsychotherapy.com. There will be a place, it'll be the other thing on the contact. Know that I am kind of vast and might be a week, okay?
Hello. Okay, good, this is working. Hi, I'm Julie. My pronouns are she, her. And as I'm a person with autism, and my personal experience has been that when people find that out about me, they start assuming things about my capabilities that they didn't before they knew the diagnosis, that often they're cognitive, that I must not understand things they're talking about or not know how to do certain things because I'm autistic, even though they may have literally just seen me doing those things. How do you deal with that? Because I don't think I've figured out how to deal with that without blowing up at people, and I don't want to.
Without us saying, what is wrong with you?
It's frustrating.
I don't know, I'm 64. It's taken me only to really recently to have a little bit of patience with people. I don't know I'm older than you. Take a breath. Say, do you want to know more about what autism is? Do you want to? It seems like you have some assumptions. Or some ideas that you learned somewhere else, and I'm happy to provide those. I mean, we're autistic. We're already using tons of spoons just showing up. So to have to educate someone where they just infantilizes us and maybe leaned in and put their hands on your leg while doing it, which I've had happen, oftentimes it doesn't work till afterwards, where I say, you know, I had this experience, I'd like you to read this, and if you do, send me a message and you'll get a little star and wristband. Okay. And have a good little resource sheet. Maybe I'll put some of these on a little card and just hand them to people and say, you failed, but you know, it's just your first time. Okay, I think my time's up. Thank you all.